Hello, this is Mark Sabatella from Outside Shore Music. In this video, I'm going to give a little bit of analysis of the main melody, the main opening section of Schumann's of Foreign Lands and Men, the first movement of his Scenes from Childhood. And I don't really have a specific point I'm going to make here. I want to. My point maybe is simplicity is great. You can do wonderful things with simple tools, and Schumann has made a really lovely piece of music out of something that's actually very easy for us to kind of get inside and see what's going on. So I'm going to let MuseScore just play that first 8 bars, and then I'm going to tell you what I want to tell you about it. And that's it. Okay, so the first thing that I want to observe about this is it has a very simple harmonic structure, and you can tell this by just looking at these arpeggios. Each one is basically a 4-note voicing, and if you play all the notes together, you'll see, well, we have a G major triad, then we have a C sharp diminished 7th chord. All right, maybe not the simplest thing in the world, but we'll come back to that. And then we have a D major chord, a D7 chord in first inversion. And then we have the same thing again, G major, the C sharp diminished, the D7 in first inversion, then the G major, and then we have G major in first inversion, and then a C chord in first inversion, and then we have a D chord but with a suspension, this fourth, the G that's left over from the previous chord, left over in 2 voices, and then it resolves in contrary motion. The 2 G's resolve to an F sharp and an A in a D7 chord, and then we're back to a G chord. So harmonically speaking, what have we had here? We've had the 1 chord, the G chord. We've had the 5 chord, the D chord, sometimes with a 7th. And we had the 4 chord. Those were the main chords we had, other than that diminished chord. That was the one kind of interesting chord here, right? So what is it doing? Well, C sharp diminished resolves to D. If we were in the key of D, that C sharp diminished would be the 7th chord. So it is said to tonicize the D. It is sometimes called a secondary diminished chord. It is the 7 chord in the key of D. Not that we're in the key of D, but we're temporarily visiting D, so we kind of give him his own 7 chord so he feels at home. So it's mostly the 1, the 4, and the 5 chord, just with that little diminished chord to kind of help the 5 chord along. We get the 7th on the 5 chord occasionally. And then also, most of these chords are in root position, but there's a very clear exception, and that is when the chord changes every beat, like it does in the first measure, then they're in root position. But when we had this place, like in the second measure, where that same D chord lasts, or maybe it adds a 7th, but still it's a D chord for 2 measures, he changes inversion. He gives us root position first, then he gives us first inversion. He does the same thing with the G here. He gives us the G chord and then the G chord in first inversion. Why first inversion? Well, A, it's a perfectly good inversion, but it gives us this nice bass line. The F sharp going to the G. F sharp in the bass going to the G. Because the chord is resolving, the D is resolving to G, it's resolving down a 5th or up a 4th, right, from D to G. First inversion helps smooth that along. Same thing here. He's going from G, resolving on the circle of 5ths, down a 5th to here, and so he gives us the inversion, so we get that stepwise motion when the chord resolves. So harmonically, that's what's going on. And if you were looking at my fingers while I was playing these voicings, voice leading is impeccable, right? Notes that are common tones between the chords are held on to, right? The G is held here, and everything else moved by step. Whoops. Bottom, right? So all the voice leading is moving by step, pretty much where possible. The melody is also sort of a quintessentially simple melody in that it is all chord tones with only the brief exception of that little 16th note, right? So we have chord tone and then chord tone, the G over the diminished chord, and then the F sharp over the D chord, and the D over the D7 chord. He only uses that tiny little passing tone to get down from the F sharp to the E. It's very much just it is not a prominent note in the melody. It's not even a full eighth note, right? It's just a 16th note that gets us, it's off the beat and it leads us to the note on the beat. So it's a kind of a classic use of a passing tone, but everything else is a chord tone. And then the same thing happens in this measure. Chord tone, right? Passing tone to the next chord tone, right? So just these couple of brief passing tones. And then the final thing that I would observe, well, two more things about the melody itself. One is, it's from a voice leading perspective, it's also pretty organized using the basic principles that one always learns in voice leading. If you're gonna have a big leap up, maybe step down, right? And then he does a similar thing in the next phrase. The next measure is exactly identical. Then he has a similar phrase, right? And then he doesn't, in this case, step down, he skips down, but those three notes outline a triad, which is another one of the things you learn if you're going to put multiple leaps or skips in a row. It's nice if they outline a triad, even if we don't ever hear that triad. There's no E minor triad being played, but there's something about those combinations of intervals that the ear finds pleasing. And then he does do the nice step down thing. So, and then the form, so voice leading wise, a lot of steps. There's the dramatic big leap up right at the beginning onto that diminished chord. That's some drama, and he releases the drama with the stepping down. And then the form of the melody, we have a simple little phrase. He repeats that exact phrase. Then he does this classic thing of giving us a third time with a twist. The third time has the twist, right? Which is a really common structure. State something, repeat it, and then give us a third time with a twist. And if your twist ends up being kind of an elaboration that takes a couple extra measures, then it all adds up to 8 bars. You have a 2-bar phrase. That 2-bar phrase is repeated. It gives you 4 bars. The next version with the twist takes a couple bars, and then you finish the thought out with a couple more bars. So it's an 8-bar phrase, as is extremely typical. So I just told you almost everything there is to know about how this piece is put together, and it's very classically organized, and it just works so well. And I didn't even talk about what for most people might be the most noteworthy thing about it is, oh my gosh, look at that, it's got triplets and it's got 16th notes and what's going on. But that's just an interesting little rhythmic quirk. Some people might try to play the 16th in conjunction with the triplet, and that is definitely a thing in some types of music. I don't know that it's particularly appropriate here, but it's definitely something that you'll sometimes see people do, right dotted 8th 16th, when they really mean that 16th to coincide with a triplet. I'm not going to express an opinion on whether that's appropriate here or not. So there you have it. This is of Foreign Lands and Men, and we just looked at the entire kind of harmonic structure of the thing and the melodic structure of the thing and the voice leading, and it just all works together so beautifully. And this just came to my mind because I was working on this piece with a student the other day and was reminded of it, and I thought I would talk about it a little bit. Hope you enjoyed.